Again, it's every year it gets bigger and better people come into space, whether they're players or management or organizations throwing events. And again, we are at TwitchCon. Esports would absolutely not be where it is today without the purple. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Let's get a round of applause for that.
Absolutely. More esports at TwitchCon, but this is a good start.
We're doing our damnedest. Scoots. Next year we better. The next man in line, many of you guys probably know him from his work at Riot Games, where he was the esports manager for League Ops. There's probably been no man in esports history who's levied more fines against more teams and players than this man. This is Nick Allen. He works with us now at Twitch, and he's a fantastic guy. I've known him for many years. Nick, how about you introduce yourself?
My name is Nick Allen. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I'm just joined the Twitch team. This is week 3, so all of my answers are super biased because it's Twitch for disclosure. Came from Riot Games. Before that, worked for the greatest esports organization of all time, the IGN Pro League. I've been a competitive gamer for 15 years now. Got my start playing Smash Brothers competitively, and it snowballed into getting to work full time in this amazing industry. So really happy to be here.
Next up is a true legend. This guy has built probably the most prominent fighting game brand that we have here on Twitch. This man's, I can only imagine what this guy's frequent flyer miles look like because he's everywhere all the time. This is Victor Spooky Fontanez. He is the man behind Team Spooky. He is the broadcast wizard behind most of the fighting games that we watch, most of the fighting game broadcasts. He's worked with us on a grassroots level. He's worked on really high-profile events. This person has done just about everything. So, how about you give us a little more about yourself?
What's up, guys? This is Spooky. So I mostly cover fighting game tournaments and events, although I love to cover lots of other events. And I'm fortunate that I came from a grassroots or a community angle, but I was fortunate enough to partner with the good folks here at Twitch, including Mr. Kevin Lin and some of the folks you see around me, to try to bring fighting games into the esports level.
Have we signed that treaty yet, or Fighting Games Esports yet, or is that okay. Maybe you're at TwitchCon. Emmett will announce that next year at the keynote. We signed a treaty with Fighting Games and Esports now. So I'd also like to introduce Brandon Nance. He does a lot of work in the Smite communities. He's also done a lot of work in Smash Brothers. So he served two maybe lesser visible communities, and he's worked really hard. He's also competed on a national level in these titles, and he's the man. So how about you give us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Dan Brandon. I started off as a competitive player pretty early on, but I got serious in 2005 when I started playing Smash Brothers. I helped grow Smash Brothers scene in my area as well as I could. And in 2009, a friend of mine who isn't on this panel, who I adore, who I think you might know, his name is Solid Jake. He's doing a lot of work right now with Heroes of the Storm as a commentator. He streams before Twitch was a thing. We started by doing a stream for Smash Brothers, and we commentated, and it made no sense. No one had ever done that for Smash before. It was weird. And watching DJ Wheat's keynote yesterday, I felt a lot of nostalgia there. Like, I can't believe that we're doing this. And when Twitch gave us a platform to be able to do this on a global level, I just wanted to commentate. I did it for Smash for a while. We talked about FGC's not really esports. It was hard to do that. Shout out to D1 who made that happen. I made my switch in 2012 to Smite. I work for Hi-Res Studios right now as a full-time professional commentator and streamer, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I love esports more than anything, but being able to be the voice behind it is something super special. Being a part of it is really humbling. For you guys to want to come and listen to me, or I guess to a lesser extent, Scoots talk. Yeah.
Oh, it's on, right?
No, we're going to start earlier.
First blood. You need to clean this mic up all the time.
It's just awesome, and thank you guys for coming.
So our last panelist is he rounds out the group with a really unique angle, and I think he's going to really be able to add a lot. And he's a little bit of a mystery to me too. So this is Andre Reynad Yanyuk. He is, I guess, sort of the embodiment of what I would call like new esports. This is the sort of folks that didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. He is a full-time broadcaster. He's a professional player himself. He's also run, he owns the team Tempo Storm, which is really gaining a lot of steam. This sort of personality didn't simply exist a couple of years ago. You had to pick one or the other. So I think he'll really round out the panel. I think he'll be a great contrast to Scoots. This is sort of the young gun, and old Grandpa Scoots over there in the corner. So how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do now.
Love you, Reynad.
Thank you. I love me too. Yeah, I mean, I started working at Twitch back in 2012, just streaming Magic a lot. I found the website, watched the Magic streamers, because that was the game I played the most, and I just thought, like, these guys could be way more entertaining, and decided to give it a shot, and got partnered within a couple of weeks, and I saw Hearthstone come out, and it kind of did everything right that Magic kind of did. It was way better viewer experience, so kind of saw it as the future, went all in, quit my job as a delivery guy, Jimmy John's, and now I'm here. Channel took off pretty quick. I decided to turn it into an org rather than signing a deal with some existing team, and just so I had kind of a foothold in the industry for a longer time. I think even if Hearthstone became less popular, I'd still have something to contribute. So, Touchstone's going well now because guys like these paved the way for well over a decade for me. I feel like we've come along pretty far, but now just day to day, I balance streaming and spend about half my time running the team.
Okay, swell. The general format of the panel is I have a couple of questions that I picked out myself, and then we're going to open it up. Because again, I think one of the more valuable things that we can take away from this is like, you get the occasional interaction on Twitch or Twitter or Reddit, but very seldom do you get the opportunity to actually talk to these guys and pick their brains. So we're going to be doing a pretty lengthy Q&A session. So I encourage you guys to put questions that really mean a lot to you. I think part of this panel might be a little insider baseball, but again, I think that's really valuable, because I think the more people understand the nuances of just esports and how we all work with one another, I think the better off we're going to be as a community at large. And I suppose the paramount question that I think is really fitting to start all of this off, because it's sort of the first question you have to ask when you get involved in esports. It's something that I hear very frequently is, how do I get that shot? How do I do it? This industry is young and it's growing, and job opportunities aren't very plentiful right now. Historically, the answer has been volunteer, and as we creep into the era of huge acquisitions and lots of VC money, that answer has gotten less and less acceptable for some people, not all people. So my question for you, and I'll start with Scott, is how did you get your involvement with esports? What was it for you that made you jump in? And what advice do you give to people now who want to start and want to make this career?
I mean, for me, I got in because I played Counter-Strike. And I was with a team that I didn't really understand the concept of like online play or leagues or anything. And this is again 1999 when Counter-Strike came out, but there was already Quake stuff going on. So I knew a little bit about competitive gaming, but I wasn't good at Quake, so I didn't really play it very much because it's really hard. It still is. So again, I met some guys in the server, right? And I started chatting with them because it's a team-based game. Like, what do you want me to do? And anyway, long story short, leads me to join a team called UGP. And we went to CPLs. For a while, we owned like online North America in like 2000 and 2001. Doesn't mean crap nowadays. Like, we landed a Roger Wilco sponsorship, and we were like the shit, right? So, but that took me to CPLs, where then I met the bigs, right? That's when the SKs and all these big teams were forming. 3D complexity comes out of this world, right? Then you truly see, this is like sports. I can go shoot basketball hoops with my bro, but there's no way I can beat those guys, right? You see the skill separation, right? And I quickly went, well, there's no way in hell I'm going to be a pro player in this game, or like, so we were like a Tuesday softball team is how I would describe it after a while, right? You play with your buddies every Tuesday in the league. But that led me to meeting the guys that got fragged. And these guys had decided that it, to them, was a sport as well, but nobody was talking about roster moves. No one was tracking stats. No one was doing the sports journalism, if you will, of that game. There were a few sites, but they were in Europe, right? And they were either translated or actually in Swedish or a different language. So my EGP days led me to guys like Jason Baker, who were making video content, MFAVP. They were going to events and doing a lot of B-roll coverage, interviewing players, throwing them up, getting intel, giving them a little money to get them there and make the content. Did some interviews with them, interviewing guys. Like, it's so funny, like, you look at some of the interviews I did, like, I interviewed Heaton, I interviewed some SK guys that are still around, like, when they were winning something else. It's crazy. So that led me to Godfrey. They hired me and asked me to come help them. That led me and Jason then getting together, Alchemist again, and we started Godfrey TV. So, like, my path was very unique. It was kind of player-ish, into media, into then broadcasting, and then all of that led me to team management in EG, right? So I've kind of almost touched every piece of the pie, if you will. I guess the only thing I haven't really ever done is work directly with dev in that sense, but I've done kind of the stuff, media stuff. My advice to everyone is always the same. How easy is it to be an NBA player? Really, really hard. How is it to play the World Cup if you're a FIFA, guy playing football? Really, really hard. So the question, like, to be a player in esports is incredibly difficult. To be a paid player, traveling with but again, traveling. I think the dilemma we're in right now is everyone sees a lot of VC coming in. They see these huge numbers. 135,000 people were watching that H1Z1 thing earlier today, right? And that's not even really an esport. So they see those numbers.
It's a sport right now.
Yeah, it was so entertaining. But point being, everyone thinks, oh, it's so popular, there must be tons of jobs, there must be tons of avenues in. They're not. You have to work hard, like you said. You probably do have to volunteer, much like a indentured servant intern system, right?
Got rid of it. Most countries got rid of that.
Yeah.
Which is sort of curious.
But again, I came out of that. I volunteered at Godfrey for a year and a half, right? That then led to a little bit of money. That led to me then being able to say, all right, we're big enough. I can't do this job anymore, my real job, so you got to pay me more. But again, the opportunities it's just not that easy, right?
Yeah, I get the question a lot too, and I think you see these big numbers, and people say, like, I just want to get into esports. I'm not sure how I can contribute or what I can do. I just want to get in. And as the industry expands, I really tell people to start to figure out what exactly they're interested in. The days of like generalist esports people are coming to a close, at least in my opinion. I think really more and more people are specializing in things, whether it's journalism or casting or league operations, which is how I got in. All these team management, player management, there's all these things, but people are coming out with a ton of experience and are hyper specialized, and coming in with just like a general attitude that I want to get into esports probably isn't going to cut it anymore. So volunteering is obviously like an awesome way to do it. For me, I played Smash Brothers, and my friends never wanted to play unless I would organize a tournament, so I would make brackets. I would host people from towns over to come over and play with us and compete against us. So when an opportunity came up at the IGN Pro League, looking at someone who knew how to run a tournament, I've done this before. So, and there's something that I was passionate about, and I was really interested in. So figure out, again, what are you passionate in? What do you see in these guys that aspires you to want to be in esports? And figure out how to get your foot in the door in that specific niche in the industry.
Well, anyway, guys, obviously I'm not as esports as everybody else around me, but I do want to say that I think the most important thing, the most important thing is that you should not get hung up on the best. And we can look at Dota 2, I guess that's what someone considers the best right now, 18 million during the Invitational, right? But you don't need 18 million. If you can have 40%, 30% of that, you can have a very successful scene, right? And although that wasn't my intention when I first got started, whatever you do here on good old Twitch TV, whether you start out playing Magic and Hearthstone and you run your own team all of a sudden, or you start with playing Melting Blood with 10 of your friends at home, and eventually that spirals into, hey, we want you to come broadcast our big tournament for us because you're the best at doing this. The point is kind of what you said, to find your niche, but also to understand that it's more about what you just feel like doing. Esports is really just a word. You don't have to get hung up on that. If you just want to be in your pajamas and play Magic and Hearthstone at home all day, and that is successful for you and people love it, hey, I'm sure many of you guys have watched Trump stream and do off the charts with that stuff. So I think the main thing is to really find what you like to do and just do it. Don't think about it too much. Don't think about necessarily the end goal outside of, hey, I'm gonna, a few hours a day, I'm gonna broadcast myself and my friends and my crew, and travel to some big events later and learn about the community and the scene that I'm involved in when I try to play the game.
I think I got kind of lucky. I played Smash for a long time, which didn't really have a scene relevant enough to make money in it. Smash nowadays is a lot bigger. Even then, there are probably like 15 to 20 people out of the thousands that play that game that make enough, right? Without true esports behind it, it's really, really difficult. And when I made the switch to Smite, I made the switch because I like the game. And I think going back to your point, it's passion. There was no esports. We were in beta. My friend wasn't even allowed to play the game because he didn't have a code, right? I had to get it for him. So when we made a team and we wanted to play, we saw potential in it. We just wanted to grind. Like, we just wanted to play. I got lucky to the sense that Hi-Rez not only loves esports, but they love the community. They love Twitch. And Twitch loves Twitch community, right? Which is really important. So Hi-Rez hired like a lot of their former pro players. Just said, come work, come commentate, come run our esports league, come write our blog. Like, we don't care. We want something for you to do because you helped us grow the game. So I think my advice is when you are picking what you want to do, have passion in it because you don't know what it turns into. Like what if like Mango gave up on Smash Brothers, right? Because Smash, Brawl was at MLG, Melee wasn't for a little while. Like what if Mango quit? If Mango quit, there would be no Melee. Like plain and simple. Like you could be Mango, which is important. You could be D1, right? Without D1, Smash commentary doesn't exist. And now it's like Scar and Toph, and they're killing it, right? It's awesome. But without the community, there are no esports, right? Like Raynet said, he started off playing Hearthstone, he went all in. Like, be the guy that goes all in. Put your all into it, because if you half-ass it, you're not going anywhere. And if the game blows up without you, you're going to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you legitimately want a career in esports, it has to be something that you really need to commit to. And the only way to really do it is to identify something that you're good at and you enjoy doing, and then just become the best at it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you like film, you can be just refine like live video production. Learn to be the best camera guy. If you like graphic design, learn to be the best designer. Don't half-ass stream overlays. Learn actual techniques so that you can do top-notch, high-quality, like anything, like overlays for tournaments and events. Just whatever you do, as long as you are among the best at it and you legitimately bring value to an employer, there is a place for you in esports. Every single day, I'm trying to hire somebody for something new that we haven't had before. Sound production. We have like an animator for like an animated series we're doing. Just all these random things that don't seem like they tie into esports that can get you involved in the industry and working here full time. Web development. We have a team of, started with 2 guys. We're up to a development team of 6 up in Toronto, or British Columbia or something. They it's the same. Figure that out by next. It's all in Jackson. And then, the point is just whatever you do, just don't be average at it. Really go out of your way to become the best, because it's not just about being passionate, which so many of us are. It's about like you have to bring value to the person who's going to be writing your checks. And even though jobs are scarce right now, that's very quickly starting to change. Even little guys like us, we're working with like 66 contractors at this point, people that have never worked in esports before for the most part. So as long as you're good at what you do, you will find a home. And I completely agree with Scoots that being a player easily the hardest way to go.
Yeah,
like
don't do that.
It's not even a lifestyle I envy at all.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Well, your advice is actually like, that's good life advice. Like,
right,
figure out what you're good at
any
and best
industry.
at. Right? That's just, forget esports for a second. That's just.
Yeah, on top of that, one thing that is, like, even if you are the best, what you're getting paid won't always reflect that. And that's true no matter what position you have here. So a big part of it is learning like good social skills and networking. And even though it is expensive, try to get in a car with some buddies and drive to a convention that's happening sort of nearby after you've had a bit of esports experience. Just try to schmooze with some people that you recognize that you respect in the industry. Like shake hands. That really goes a long way long term. Just work on building that network once you like have something of value to bring to.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your contributions. This next question, instead of sort of going down a list, I think I'm hoping anyway that we can have a little bit more of a dialogue jump in as they find fit. As esports has continued to grow, we've gotten more and more attention from publishers, developers, right, who create this game. When you look at esports 10 years ago, right, this was sort of really a small section of their overall community. It was often underrepresented at the sort of corporate level. They weren't making a lot of decisions that involved this. But as esports has continued to grow, that's become increasingly a focal point with publishers and developers. Consider Riot Games about Blizzard. When we look at high-res, like everyone right now has a team that's actively working on their esports initiatives. As they get more involved, it becomes worrisome occasionally for third parties who operate in the space who have historically picked up the slack. What do you think is the future of these sort of relationships, and how do third parties make their mark? And I'm going to start with Alan.
Yeah, really good question. I think a healthy ecosystem has both developer support and third-party support. So having both is super important. And at my time at Riot, I think we probably didn't put enough focus on creating third-party entities that could support the game, right? Like, you can't do everything. And if you want a lot of people participating, and as a developer, you're wanting to create this culture of competition, you really need to be looking at it sort of holistically. Third parties, everyone needs to play a part. That's a really good question. Ultimately, I think that the long term of this is that more and more developers are going to, beyond Valve, beyond Riot, beyond Blizzard, are going to figure out that there is a lot of money to be made directly from esports, and not just at a level in which is like it's a marketing play, which I think esports traditionally has been seen as a lot with developers. I think they will see it as a direct revenue stream for their game. So I think honestly in the future we're going to see more and more developers beyond the big ones we're seeing now taking things in-house and they do it themselves, so they could really profit a lot. And so it leaves the question, if more and more developers are going that route, where does that leave these third-party guys like ESL and MLG and these guys? And ultimately, not every developer is going to have the resources when they're creating a new game to go super big. They're not going to be able to create the TI5s and the LCS and this sort of thing. And because of that, there will always be room for third-party organizers, third-party organizations. But honestly, I think that you'll see less and less of them taking on these really, really big endeavors. And that the primary owners of the IP, which are the developers, are the ones that are going to be taking this in-house and doing it themselves. I think the ecosystem, honestly, in the future will look much, much different. Hopefully, in the midst of all this, the developers can also keep third-party in mind, allowing for crowdsourcing of tournaments, more people participating at all different levels. But ultimately, I think at the top level, developers are going to be owning this stuff in the future.
I think it's really important that developers are a part. I mean, I love MLG and ESL and everyone who has helped build esports, because without them, we would be nothing. Like Halo 50K started almost everything on console. It was incredible. They brought in Smash in 2004, 2005. It was insane to know that we played on this grand stage. But, as a longtime Smash player, Smash exists as grassroots. I mean, until Twitch stepped in and made it super relevant, it was just us hoping Nintendo would care, and they didn't. Or, the poor Marvel players, right? Disney's like, no, that's enough. So all these Marvel players are out in the streets now, and they're like, I guess I'm playing Street Fighter, bro. That's enough. And that sucks. Like, having a developer support Smite, or having the way that Riot supports League of Legends, or what Valve does with crowdsourcing for the international is insane. And I think that the relationship is not symbiotic. I don't think that third parties are necessary anymore, but I still think they're relevant. I still think they're important. I want them around. I think it keeps the companies honest. And I like the way that MLG runs a lot of their stuff. I like the way that ESL has their production values through the roof, especially considering where they started. But developer support is top tier. Without that money funneling in, esports can't continue to function and support the lifestyle that we've gotten used to.
I agree that developer support is really what separates a game being massive in the esports space as far as its popularity, or it kind of falling to the wayside. You can see that Smash 4, for example. It's a game that I wasn't sure would ever take off, because compared to Melee, it's objectively, it's less competitive, I guess.
Is that objective?
I don't know. Well, it's sort of subjective, isn't it?
Twitch still chiming in. Love you guys, Nintendo.
Feel free to Nintendo. But you can see the difference, right? Like Smash 4 has gotten to the point where it's almost like bigger in a lot of ways than Melee, like more signups and tournaments, things like that. Even though Melee has just so much history, and the only difference there is developer support. So I do think developer support is always important, but I don't think that they're going to try to like own the entire pie going forward. I think that even when it comes to their major events, they're still going to be outsourcing to guys like ESL, to these third parties with experience, and just having them do white label events at the very least. And I know personally that working with Blizzard, which is like the company we work with the most, they very much they encourage us. They don't just encourage us to do the events that we want to do, but they help us do them. Like nobody's going to try to push the third parties out. I don't think at any point, even if it is profitable for the company, because they realize like how harmful that is to important parts of the community, and long term, they don't need to do anything. It's not necessarily like the healthiest way to have the ecosystem exist.
Yeah, and I think one thing to keep in mind is like you make a valid point. Like ESL already does a bunch of white label stuff, and like all these third parties we're talking about have their own where they're branded ESL Pro Leagues, all these kind of things. But they also do a lot of work behind the scenes, and you have no idea. Like prime example, like ESL is helping right now. ESL is up in the Kappa Theater, but it's not their show, right? So it's not branded like that. But as per the bottom line, game devs make games, and they make them really well. So they should stick to that. But if they have the wherewithal, like an LCS, to take it all, but the folks that run Riot are not the guys doing the production. They still sub it out to a third party, obviously less and less as they got bigger and bigger. But like it's not cost effective, for example, like Blizzard, to own all the gear that ESL owns because they will use it far less than ESL uses it, right? So it makes sense that they'll always have a place. Will they lose some of their own branding in that place? Absolutely. You know, what I've noticed, again, I'm a Counter-Strike guy, right? Valve didn't give a shit about my game for about a decade and a half, right? And then when they cared, then we were like, that's how you care? Really? And obviously now, night and day. So and even all the esports back then, Dev didn't care.
I think that's really important, actually, that you bring up Counter-Strike, because the prize pools are notoriously low for the viewership and for the skill level of the players. It should be higher.
Yeah.
But you're right. Developer support is important, but that scene exists almost entirely on the players and on things like ESL.
Yeah, and again, like they did a total 360. Obviously, same thing with Dota 2, and that's our big debate. So, are we going to get international? Why don't we have international? They got international. I don't want international. I like the major idea, maybe with a cap at the end of it, but I like spreading the wealth. Every 3 months, let's see who's the best. Not this big hype at the end. But again, are they perfect? Do they screw shit up? Sure, but they don't necessarily do it in production. They hire other people. They hire the DreamHacks. They hire the ESLs. They license out their game to be used. But when it comes to the majors, they're very much involved. But Valve will step back on all the online stuff, all the little things. They don't care, right? Blizzard cares wherever their games are used, right? They all care about their IP in very different ways, right? Riot started very third party, right? MLG ran stuff for them. ESL ran stuff for them. These guys learned all the cool stuff about it and said, you know what, we should just do it ourselves. And again, they hired other people, they brought people with them, and they decided as a dev that we should own this, run this, not only their productions, but obviously they built their own league, right? And we can debate all day if that's good or bad for the ecosystem of League of Legends or not. But again, I think developer support is important. Unfortunately, I kind of agree with Brandon. I think developers are going to take much more of control of their IP. Again, I think ESL will still make their money. MLG will still make their money. But I think I always use Shootmania as, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Ubisoft. I'm sorry, tracking you guys. But like that, someone sold them a bill of goods that said, hey, if you spend $1 million in your marketing and call this an esport, it'll be an esport. And we make esports, the people that play the games. You can't market me an esport, man. And unfortunately for them, the game wasn't good enough, the modes didn't work, and they spent a lot of money that year.
The Spectator was awesome, though.
Yeah,
the Spectator was awesome.
Yeah, great tools, but again, you can't force feed us that, right? You can't force feed us anything, right? Gamers. So, like, that's a developer who really wanted to care, but they got burned, right? I mean,
I think now Rocket League is doing, maybe not shoving it in our face, but they're like, this could be an esport, you guys do what you want for a few weeks and we'll see what happens, we'll get some commentators, we'll run some tournaments, and it's hella fun to watch. It's so fun to watch. But they're kind of having the same idea of Shootmania, as that they're going to build this really competitive game, except they're not going to shove it in our face. They just said, go.
Yep, much more organic, their efforts, yeah, absolutely. So this, I call this one the Scoot Special, and this is a sales opportunity for next year's TwitchCon, by the way. If you would like to brand the Scoot Special, please reach out to me after the event.
Wait, we haven't even talked about money. What?
This is the esports panel. E means money.
Yeah, we're getting close. So I actually have to pick like 3 questions because we're going to move over to Q&A.
Okay.
Soon, so I'm simply not as important as these guys. When asked about sports gambling earlier this year, the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, had a very famous, I guess, in the sports community remark where he noted, kind of flippantly, that it's good for business, right? That was about the extent of his quote. Gambling in esports has been a hot topic this year. I think universally we know that it drives traffic, but I think a lot of us are concerned about it being involved in our scene and to what extent we involve it, what makes best practices with gambling. So I guess my general question is, what do you think about the current betting landscape, and what do you think is ideal? And I'm going to start with you again, Scott, and then you guys just wrap as you see fit.
Yeah, and we're not talking about fantasy, right? We're talking about true betting, gambling, whether it's skins or cash money on games and that kind of betting. This fantasy is kind of different.
Fantasy is here in the U.S. Fantasy is defined as a
game of skill.
It's a game of skill. Yes, precisely. So it is excluded.
Yeah. Maybe some of you know I made a big stink last year about underage gambling in Counter-Strike. Maybe you're unaware about betting at all. I don't know. Does anyone not know that you can bet on video games these days? Okay. Well, you can. Just like you can bet on a football game or a basketball game with a sports book, you can bet virtual things. You can bet your skins in Counter-Strike go on sites, or you can actually go to cash sites and bet. Use your credit cards. I grew up in Nevada. I went to school in Las Vegas. I'm well aware of gambling culture. I'm well aware of how casinos operate. I gamble myself. I love blackjack. I used to bet on football games. Kids shouldn't do it. That's my only take. Gambling, absolutely, like again, from the casino perspective, from the sportsbook perspective, from the fan base perspective, it absolutely blows up sports. If people can bet on a sport, I mean, we do it all the time, right? Bet you $5, right? But if you legalize that and monetize it and business it, it grows sports. I mean, real sports is backed by huge numbers of people that gamble legally and illegally, right? So, one of the biggest money makers in Vegas is sports books, right? They win or lose no matter what. So, I'm all for gambling because I like more people caring about esports. But we have a very young demographic, right? And we already get grief. I mean, remember when we signed Monster? How can you be pitching energy drinks to kids? That is so bad for them. Okay, you all can shut the fuck up now. You're now pandering to serious vice. And I have no problem with it being a vice, just like alcohol or anything else, but it shouldn't be in a 12-year-old's face, a 14-year-old's face, a 16-year-old's face. In my country, unfortunately, here in the United States, you have to be in very few actual states to legally be able to bet on a football game or a basketball game, right? It's all tied to, like, the gambling lobbyists have kind of locked that down, right? So, unfortunately, we have a mix of sites around the world that do follow official sports betting rules, like they've even partnered with sports betting sites to use their age, gating software and all that kind of stuff. That's awesome, right? But there's all these sites that you go to and it just says, must be 18 years old to play. Okay, I am. Click, and away I go, right? And I don't like that, right? A month ago, BBC wrote an article about this, right? That's what I don't want. I don't want 5 articles on CNN and all these different websites about drug use that we don't have a problem with, and now gambling that I think we actually do have a problem with, right? So I just want it regulated. I want it to be just like legal sports betting in whatever country you're in. That's how it should be, right? And then we can get into the debate of should we even be advertising to the fan base that watches, even if they can't use the product, right? But that gets even weirder, right? Because what happens when alcohol sponsorships show up? Do we get to start saying no to those? Oh, a lot of traditional sports do, right? So my take on it is it's awesome. It's growing any esport you can bet on, but man, it is dangerous when it's unregulated. It's one of those things that mainstream will grab onto, just like kids get violent. They shoot up schools with the video games. That's what we don't want. We don't want that eye of media on us, right? We want the good media. And so that's my rant on it. Like, I just want it regulated and kind of controlled, right? It's just not happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up alcohol, actually. I believe there's some federal regulations in the U.S. where if you, in order to advertise a product, 60% of your user base needs to be able to consume the product. So you're probably not going to see an alcohol sponsorship in esports for quite some time. But I agree, on the developer side, running the LCS and the competitive league and gambling popping up, we had to really, really analyze what we're going to do. Ultimately, we decided like this thing is going to exist no matter what. And so in that case, the fighting against it is almost as futile, right? There's almost no reason to do it because another one will pop up, something disappears, another one's going to pop up. So we decided ultimately that we were going to do our best to work with gambling websites to help set regulations, find out if like there's sort of out of the ordinary bets happening, just trying to make sure that we could stay on top of things from our perspective because we wanted to be able to curb this as much as we could. And that's actually my encouragement for all tournament organizers, if they're watching or if you know any of them, that like these all over the place, all these CS:GO tournaments, all these Dota tournaments, League of Legends, whatever it is, the organizers really need to be working with these organizations to make sure that integrity is maintained around gambling because it's going to happen. And all you can do is make sure that your sport is preserved because nothing can destroy a sport like gambling can, to be perfectly honest.
And we've had match fixing, right? And it's the funniest thing is people are like, dudes, they're not worth anything. It's just an off skin, bro. Like it's not real. And I'm like, are you telling me that we have all these banned North American players because they wanted a new op skin? Money, 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 right? So like, it needs to be addressed for sure. And I think where it gets that sticky wicket is not even the cash side of it, it's this virtual skin thing, right? Mom, I want to buy the new Call of Duty game. Will you put $50 on my Steam wallet? Sure, honey. Kid goes and buys skins and then goes gambles with it. Because the Reddit's like, well, parents should do a better job. Come on. So...
Well, I mean, this is the same conversation that we should have about vaping and other things like that. There are so many companies out there that will market their products saying, well, we sell vapes, but there's no nicotine, there's no, tobacco products and nothing. Like, we only sell this. If kids go on our site, they know which side of it to go to because you say, I'm 18, let me in the site. Like, we have the same sponsors that are pushing gambling that we're pushing vaping. But because vaping is seen as more of a social engagement that a lot of our streamers and our pro players do, that to me is way more emulated than gambling. And I do think that gambling is a problem, but if we're going to start, we should start at the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't want a 12-year-old kid that watches me saying, hey, I'm going to buy a vape because DM bought one, even though I didn't because ew. It's not a joke.
Spooky, is gambling a problem in the FGC, or is there like too much collusion?
Side bets and FGC are godlike.
So obviously, side bets, that's the topic, and it happens a lot. And you have to see lots of people have gentlemen's agreements among themselves and say, do you think this person's going to win? Well, I think this person will win. Would you like to bet me $10 on that? And this happens all the time. I would just say that I've seen people that I know really well be destroyed by gambling and just spend thousands of dollars. Side betting, no BS, this happens. It's real. And I've seen those same guys go to casinos and waste thousands of dollars. Hey, evolution takes place in Las Vegas.
I lost $500 I think like 2009 or something because I bet on Justin Long over DSP Street Fighter 2. DSP is his only tournament ever.
So my main thing is that I do have a fear, just as the other gentlemen around me do, that if it's not regulated properly, that it will cause a lot of pain for people. But I'd like to not just see that. I'd like to see, if we fear things like vaping, we should educate people properly and have like things like, well, if you have a problem with smoking, then here's, our Twitch approved guys who can talk to that can help you with this problem. Say, do a gambling. Hey, if you have a gambling problem, please come to somebody that's going to know that can help you, because otherwise...
We're not hiring for that.
No vape counselors at Twitch?
And that's not itemized in next year's budget. That's not there.
You got time.
You got you'll see Kevin running around. Let him... Let's see how he feels about that, and then get back to me.
About gambling? I mean, it's a big part of why Counter-Strike, in my opinion, is kind of either the biggest or second biggest esport right now. I mean, it has a strong effect on whatever game it's a part of. A lot of good, a lot of bad sometimes, potentially. I don't know what kind of regulation should happen, but I do think it should probably come from the developer, however it's done. So.
Did anyone think right now was just going to say bet on Tempo Storm and drop the mic?
Your first or second?
Don't let me go first.
Second, absolutely second.
Hi guys. So my question is that it feels like 2016 is going to be the year of like VC funding, and we're hearing rumors of like sports organization owners starting to come in and be interested in esports and all that kind of thing. Is this going to be good? Is it going to be bad? I mean, what should the general feeling be around big money coming into esports?
I'm going to sell my team to the Bulls. We're going to be the Bulls. Please buy merch.
Look, I haven't been in the scene as long as these guys, but from what I've seen and what I've heard, anytime that big money is pumped into the scene in the wrong way, in a way that is not supporting grassroots growth, there's just a really big backlash, and it falls flat every single time. The entire esports community, you almost have to start little for something to really succeed and have a big influence. So, I mean, if that money is just being thrown around and you have people from outside of the scene trying to get a good return on it, I think it will fall flat. But I think that, if they're supporting people that are doing healthy things to the community, then, the viewers are going to respond well to that, and it will help the scene. But it really just depends on where that big money's going.
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends what the intention of all this capital is coming in, trying to make a profit, trying to invest, get a quick return. Obviously not a great thing, right? My concern is that it's a lot of wealthy people looking to exploit a young industry that's growing really rapidly. So that in mind, it's quite scary. Cautiously optimistic is kind of like the word that's being passed around when people talk about all this money coming in. I think it could be really good. A lot of people have dedicated a lot of their lives to this, that love this stuff, and want to see it be successful and grow and expand. So there's a ton of opportunity, a ton of potential for all this new capital coming in to really help grow, bring more eyeballs, just make the pie bigger for everybody. With that being said, it could easily take a turn, and it could really just, again, people coming in, exploiting the system, hurting people, a bubble, that could burst and really hurt a lot of people that have invested so much. Hard to say.
Yeah, and I'd echo the same thing. It's not the first gold rush we've had. I would say it's the biggest gold rush we've had in esports, money-wise, but we've had these cycles where all of a sudden we're the coolest kid, and people will come and make some money. The fear is that they don't get burned, right? Either by picking the wrong business or literally getting scammed, right? And we've had all of that, right? If one more person that's never been successful in the sport of esports tells me they're an esports consultant, I'm going to choke them, right? You can't be a consultant in a business that you're not good at, you know nothing about, right? So put your business cards away. And again, I'll bring up a case of AMD. AMD years ago, CXG, Las Vegas tournament, Counter-Strike, the tournament went to shit. AMD, I think, put in like 150 grand as a title sponsor, big booth, which cost its own to activate. Literally, the event collapsed on itself at the event. AMD walked out of the space for about 2.5 years. Did no esports sponsorship. Before that, they were on CPL stuff, they were everywhere, and they went, nope, Intel, you can have it. They got burned. Huh? Yeah, CXG.
So go Intel,
yeah, and obviously they gave space to Intel, right? And obviously they're back now. But that's what I love big money. Like you see, like DraftKings coming in and that kind of stuff. That's great, but the exploitative stuff is what is going to get burned, right? If you come in thinking you're going to get rich in esports, yeah, good luck. Ain't going to happen.
Thank you, Travis.
Yeah.
Hello, friends. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Richard.
Hi, Richard.
Great panel, thanks guys. So my question is, you talked a lot early on about individuals breaking into esports, and over the last 3 months I've been working with a new esports organization, Darkwave, as a coach and then now kind of like a co-manager. Do you still think there's a place for amateur teams? We're a League of Legends organization. Is there still room for that, or is it that there's already so many big dogs that you have to go in as an individual and find your place, not so much an organization?
I think a lot of that comes down to funding, right? It's going to be hard for you to compete with people like Tempo Storm and people like Liquid. If Liquid wants a team, they get paid for it. So it comes down to, can you build your talent up from the bottom and keep them with, by building brand loyalty within your players, or are you going to be able to outfund Tempo Storm? Probably not.
But I think also, though, Tempo Storm answered your question, because where was he 2 years ago, right? So there is a place, but you're going to have to work hard. I don't want to know exactly where you were 2 years ago.
I'm going to tell you, quite honestly, the actual, money as an org, it's bad. If you want, how do I put it? To be a profitable team in the industry, I would say only about 5 or 6 are in the entire space out of the thousands and thousands of teams that exist. And I'm a very unique case because I had a big stream to market my players right off the bat, and it also provided me funding, so I could invest more than most people could. And I targeted Blizzard games, which guys like TSM and Cloud9 didn't really care about. Unfortunately, it does just come down to money, and if your question is, can I build a successful amateur team, it has to be, you have to strike gold somewhere. You have to find, the North American faker, and then you have to make sure that, this 19-year-old kid won't just, walk out on his contract with you. Because what if he does? Because he will. Because somebody will offer him more money, and then once he walks off, what can you do? You can't sue him because he has 100,000 Twitter followers or whatever. It's horrible PR. It's just a lose-lose situation. There's a lot of reasons that it's really difficult to be a new team coming in, but most of it is the lack of money and where the money is located. Riot is spending upwards of over $1 million per weekend or whatever on LCS production. So the teams that are carried by Riot have so much more money to play with that when they go into a scene outside of Riot, like Counter-Strike or Dota or a Blizzard game, it's like an American citizen shopping in Bangladesh or whatever. It's not fair. Is what I'm saying. The figures they work with, it's just the way the money is distributed. It's really, really hard to make a living in that particular space. That would be my advice. But it's not to say don't try, but you have to have something going for you. I was a unique case where I had a stream and I was very uncomfortable with being happy, so I decided to work 18 hours a day.
Nice. Not to make it all about money, but it really helps a lot in the sense that you need to have the best players. How do you create or have the best players if they're part-time employees?
I think that goes to his question. Professional and amateur, or successful and amateur, those things don't go together.
So hard.
Yeah, and they're challengers though.
Oh, okay. That's good. You're wondering, but you lose.
They're
players.
close.
They go to school. They have a part-time job that makes it so they can't invest as much as the next guy who is on a team, where he can play for 14 hours a day. He has an analyst, and he has a coach, and he has all these things to help him be successful. Breaking it is not impossible, but it's extremely hard.
We're gonna go to speed round right now. So what we're gonna do is I don't have a metaphor. I was hoping that something would come up. So anyway, what we're gonna do is the next 5 questions. So we have 5 minutes left in this panel. I'm going to allow a minute for the question and a minute for answers, and then we're just gonna move on. So be speedy and be insightful.
Speed round.
So my name is Brandon. For interest of full disclosure, I worked at some of the Shoe Mania events. You guys touched on that. I think the reason that game didn't do too well is because they didn't have any type of casual foundations to support it. So my question to you guys is, what do you think is the future of games for esports? Do you think it's either games that have more of a casual aspect to them, that become competitive over time, or do you think it's more whatever the community can spontaneously latch onto? Or games like Counter-Strike where they're very ultra-competitive, or Dota, but then you add on these whole other third-party systems on top of that give casual players a reason to play games.
Seriously, holy moly, all right guys, go.
I mean, honestly, the best way to describe it is that esports, and this is from Mick from Face It, so I didn't come up with this, he invented this, is great, or he put it pretty eloquently, is esports is a consequence of competitive communities, right? So esports comes from a hyper-competitive community that loves to compete, that loves to play against each other, loves to watch the grand finals and know exactly how to do this combo, right, and learn exactly how to be better so they can beat their friends, right, and then maybe they beat their friends and they beat the guy town over and they want to see who else they can beat, right, but there is a foundation of competition that needs to exist, and in the esports graveyard that is Shoot Mania and some other titles that I won't get into,
Marvel.
But in that graveyard lives esports that went to the top first instead of trying to stir up competition at the bottom. And ultimately, that foundation is what's going to feed your pro scene. It's going to create that path to pro.
I think it's really a little simpler than that. It's just your game has to be good.
Okay, there we go. That also would have worked.
Maybe it wasn't good.
Acceptable answer as well.
I'm sorry to make the audience.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Shumani's coming out.
Hey, my name is Jess, also known as Irby. I have a really important question for everyone here. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to answer. Every mainstream media gets it wrong. Everyone has a lot of opinions on it, which is, how do you spell and how do you capitalize? And how
I'm going to take this one. It is ESPORTS with no accents, nothing fancy. It is capital E at the beginning of the sentence. It is non-capital E for the rest. There's no hyphen.
Everybody clap.
It is. There's no room for interpretation. You're either correct or you are incorrect.
I think your time's up. I'm sorry.
You capitalize the S, don't you?
Hello.
Go with that hot bit thing.
Howdy.
Yeah, I'm Shadowwater, and I really want to know how do you become pro at video games? What would be your one tip on how to be really, really good at a game? And if I could real quick give a shout out to the Company Heroes 2 esports community. Right now we have the largest tournament in the history of the game going on. So check that out at coh2.org or Sunday Night Fights on.
Do you have a featured market?
What was that? I'm going to give this one to Andre because I think he might be most equivalent to this.
Yeah, you have to be an analytical thinker, and you have to treat it like a full-time job. And any time you play the game, just ask yourself what you could have done better, what the consequences of the decisions you made were. It's just like a certain type of person that's very good at like thinking that way. And then once you move beyond that, and you're putting in 12 to 16 hours a day into whatever game you're playing, then you can learn all the little nuances of it. But a good place to start is always just learn from players that are better than you, and then once you get to their level, you start to develop your own opinions about things and go from there.
You have to treat it like any other job or any other sport. Practice a lot, grind, look at other players that are good, scour Twitch and YouTube all the time, and grind it out if that's what you want to do.
And the last question of the panel, so thank you very much, sir, will come from Prosser Robinson, a friend of many of ours.
Isn't there a... Are we the last panel of the day here? Can't we go longer? Who do I have to pay?
Let's see. I think we pay ESO no matter what. I think so can I get like a wave? I mean, we have 3-4 more questions. Can we do this? Somebody give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Do it! We got a thumbs up.
Somebody, guys, just raise your thumbs.
I got you over there, brother.
We're still going to stick to the quick answer format.
We can just move this to the pub.
Are you buying it? Are you buying it?
Thank you for sticking with us as we work through that, and I appreciate that. The floor is yours.
Sure. So we're talking a lot about esports as a sustainable business that's going to grow over time. We talked a little bit about how esports exists as a consequence of communities that exist. In my opinion, one of the biggest problems that everybody complains about and no one's doing a good job of addressing is toxicity. Toxicity, I mean inside the game, I mean online in places like chats and forums, and I also mean in real life at cons. A lot of things make that better. Do you think that toxicity is a problem we need to address in esports, and if so, how?
So I commentate a lot. I catch a lot of heat for the things I say against players. I'm sure Spooky has that same. Yeah, it happens. Honestly, I think that starts home at Twitch. I would like to see better moderation from Twitch, because for someone to send the hate mail that I get to me and then not get IP banned immediately, like why we're allowing that to happen, I don't want to throw Twitch under the bus, because I bleed purple. I bled purple before that emote existed, years before. I love this company.
It's a rare condition, and
but I mean, it's dark, man. There's some dark people out there, and we don't control it. Like we can't do it. Like maybe twitch.tv/nightgame, and we run all our tournaments there. But we can only ban them. They can make a new account and come back. We should be able to IP ban front to back, but that's not something I can control.
I think that that problem, the toxicity, it kind of overlaps with also the whole, like, you incorporating women into gaming as well. It's kind of the same cause, which is just the age group of people we're dealing with. When everyone here at this convention is still a fan of esports 20 years from now, and the age group that is following the industry is more standardized, like a standard bell curve, it won't be as big of a problem. But right now, it's just like 30% of our community is 14-year-old kids who write stuff like that without fully understanding like what it means.
But if we don't regulate it in 10 years, we just get a whole new set of these kids.
Yeah, I would like to see some kind of, I don't know.
30 seconds.
But I don't think Anna's like talking about like someone spamming something in chat. This is a much bigger issue than even.
No, I know. I mean,
get a message, right?
I've seen broadcasters be ruined by this. Okay, guys that I know well that don't want to stream anymore because the one time they did stream, a bunch of people came in their channel and said some hateful remarks to them, and literally tears are coming down their eyes as they broadcast. And yeah, I agree. Something has to be done about it, like ASAP.
But it's I
15
mean,
seconds.
The gaming community is toxic, right? This is a bigger this is a discussion that's happening in the gaming world too, right? So the esports side of your question, you have to add fandom and team love and team hate, right? And so our trash talk in some regards goes way past something like I hate that, like the team hate, right? Because we have this thing to cheer for and cheer against. So where it gets really ugly when you talk about toxic stuff is the players. Like when you're talking about the crap you guys get, the players, like again, I'm a Counter-Strike guy, man, and if Cloud9 loses a game and that kid has bet on the crap they're getting, like literally, they'll lose a match and their Twitter feeds will blow up. So yes, we have a problem. The Twitter feeds blow up with, you fucker, you cost me $200, fuck you, hope you die, hope you die, hope you die, hope you die, your team sucks, you fucking die, you fucking die, you fucking die. And you'll see, unfortunately, the players will bite back now. They're not just taking it. They're like, previous article, tweet back, hey, you know what? If you lost money and you're mad at me, fuck you, I don't care. Right?
So you gotta...
Unfortunately, they're being toxic back. So, like, I think some things are less toxic, but this is getting really toxic, like this player stuff. Like, and I think it's like you said, your friend, I think some of these players are going to get to the point where not making that much money, I'm not winning tournaments. Yeah, this hate is too much. You know, we've had scenarios of stalkers, restraining orders. Sorry. And that was outspoken over there.
That was
it's Anna Cross-Cross. You got
That's not what they're telling me. So we have time for 2 more questions, and we need to strictly adhere to the rules. I am so sorry. Most of us are so sorry.
As a commentator, one of my favorite people to work with is D1. I've mentioned his name a few times. The dude's super professional. He carries conversations well. Never gets awkward. Shout out to D1.
Yeah, I really like Cody Connors.
I do like Counter-Strike, so I guess I have 2 answers. DJ Wheat?
Yes.
Absolutely. Top of the list, no matter what. And then in the Counter-Strike world, I do a little bit of Counter-Strike hosting, and he's a man everyone loves to hate, but man, you put me next to Thor, and I will stand there for days. So, that's it.
Thank you, guys.
And the queen of esports herself, Rachel Quirico, in the crowd. Everything I learned from Rachel.
And our last question of the night's panel is a doozy.
Alright, so you were talking earlier about more developers taking over control of the esports, and if there's going to be legalization that's going to be controlled, it's going to come from them. But how does that work with problems like cheating, gambling, match fixing, drug use, and drug testing? Does esports need some kind of international body that governs all of it, or is it governing within the games from the developers?
Player association.
Yeah, good question, and I think it's per game. I know there's a big debate, like should there be an esports players association, but I think esports players really care about their game, and they often, more times than not, don't care about anything else, really, other than their game. So I think Counter-Strike should have a player association. Counter-Strike should also have a team association. Because you need like that triangle, right? If you think of American sports, I think there's the NFL, there's a team association, the owners, and there's a player association. And all 3 of them figure out how they're going to do it, right? And no one...
We are getting
no one get too screwed.
Yeah. So you have until he gets to the back of the room to say whatever you want to say.
So yeah, I think it's one thing really, I loved it. So much money for you. So I think yes, but probably game specific.
It's really hard because unlike baseball or football, the IP is owned by the developer. So if there is a body or a governing body, they always have to report to the developer, and that gives them a lot more leverage. So very challenging for there to be a central body.
Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you all.